that's it for our
Let's
poll
welcome
this
one of
morning.
Trinidad Tobago's premier fetters. Good morning, Martin George.
I say,
You see, I had to look up because I thought you all had another guest also.
Yeah, you fetten, you bring all the fett on them.
They must be
Yeah, hi, good
infecting
morning,
fed
good
after
morning.
fed after fed. That's what Martin did.
Martin George enjoys himself. Let's just put it this way. And he is proud to post when he's enjoying himself. I like that.
As he should.
I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Good morning, everybody.
How are you,
Morning.
Constance, joining us this morning?
Yeah, I'm great.
How's the new year treating you so far?
Extremely busy. Extremely busy, but I always tell people busy is good, so I don't complain.
Busy is
But
very good.
especially as an attorney.
Yes.
Well, the year started with a bang. Well, the last year ended with a bang, and an unfortunate, grim milestone bang of a record-breaking number of murders. And January started with 61 by my last count, which is another grim milestone that we can't celebrate in any way. We shouldn't be celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on just last year and why you think we got there? If there was any we'd have done differently, or we can learn from it, and also January, because if the January trend continues, we're going to surpass that, unfortunately.
Well, true. Because if you just extrapolate the numbers, I mean, 61 by 12, you crossing 720. So we definitely don't want to reach into those numbers. But the fact of the matter is that when one looks back at last year, it's clear that there has been a heightening of the lawlessness and the total disregard for lawful authority. I mean, you've seen more brazen attacks. You've seen more reckless attacks. I mean, whereas previously, I guess maybe there was some code of honor among the criminals that maybe they wouldn't be attacking women or children. That's out the door. You saw children murdered as collateral damage. I think even for the start of this year, you had at least two instances, of youngsters being murdered. Also, I mean, look at the situation of that boy in St. Augustine. I mean, he was just running across the road to see if his grandmother was okay. The police said he clearly was not the target. There was no connection at all whatsoever with the who the bandits came for, and still they killed the boy. So I mean, I think that we really have to recognize that we have, I think, basically crossed the Rubicon when it comes to that idea of us thinking that we are safe and secure in Trinidad and Tobago. And what's the amazing thing about it? I mean, Paul, Wendell, and Richard, and Steve, is the fact that what we see reported in the media is not the full picture, because there are so many things that happen that are not reported. We had a client who was supposed to meet with us yesterday, and the woman couldn't because she and her husband at 9 o'clock in the morning were held up at gunpoint and robbed of their vehicle. I mean, that didn't make news, it didn't make papers. So you ask yourself, how many more incidents like that happen across Trinidad and Tobago on a daily basis that we don't even know about because they don't make the media? So, the amount of crime that is occurring, I think, is actually more than we even know or are willing to acknowledge or accept. And the reality is that Erla Christopher, as the new commissioner coming in, she really has her hands full. And I mean, while one is certainly happy for her, being appointed to the post, you ask yourself, I mean, is it that the government has given some assurance that she will be there more than a couple months, because she's going to turn 60 in May? So you ask yourself, what is the plan there when you have that on the cards? Is it that you have guaranteed that she's going to be getting another 2 years in the post or something of the sort, so that some sort of proper planning can be done and some sort of proper implementation can be done by her, or is it just basically to give a golden handshake, upon retirement?
Well, to be
We
fair,
have to ask these
the
questions.
Prime Minister indicated when he presented it to the Parliament last Friday that her birthday is in May, and there's a plan in place to petition the PSC to offer her, which they can under the law, I understand, a year contract past that on contract past the retirement, with the option to renew if her performance is optimal after that year. So he actually addressed that in the Parliament.
Right, yes, I know. And I mean, the thing is, Paul, I mean, while, yes, they have agreed to do so, I mean, even in such a scenario, you ask yourself, is it that, okay, 3 months and then a 1 year and then a 1 year after that, is that really sufficient for someone to really be able to actually make a difference or make a dent in it, if it is that you are on this kind of, waiting game? I mean, of course, we hope that she will. I mean, the nation is full of expectation in that regard. But the thing is, she now, I think, needs to come out and speak to the public. I'm very sorry, and I think both yourself and I think Mr. Scotland and Senator Lakshmi, she also expressed her disappointment, that the commissioner designate did not show up at the Joint Select Committee meeting. And I think that's an important meeting that she ought to have been there to at least be able to give some, accounting to the nation. Okay, well, all right, okay, coming into the job, these are my plans, this is what I'm looking at doing, this is how I plan to tackle these things. I mean, Paul, as a member of the Police Service Commission, I remember whenever we had Joint Select Committee, that is something you took very, very seriously. You don't miss that. You don't miss that at all, and I mean, I saw yesterday something she missed again, again claiming national security. And I'm thinking, but I mean, the Joint Select Committee of Parliament, this is one of the highest bodies you could ever be summoned before. So therefore, how could you tell me that you have something, I mean, unless it's a National Security Council that has a meeting maybe going on for 2 days now, that nobody knows about, because parliamentarians ought to know if National Security Council is having a meeting, because some of the members would make up that. So I was underwhelmed by her absence. That's all I will say.
The certainty of a police commissioner, because that's what you're touching on, the hardcore certainty of a police commissioner being appointed and being appointed for a definitive period. We have often gone into periods where we have had acting commissioners of police for lengthy periods of time. Do you think that issue of non-confirmation or a no substantive holder feeds into the criminality that we see in the country, or you think that it really doesn't have an impact on the criminals?
Well, it's not supposed to. It's not supposed to, because if you are the acting commissioner, then you are imbued with all the power, authority, and responsibility of a substantive commissioner. It's just that in terms of your tenure, you personally don't have that tenure. But I mean, once you personally are able to get over that, you ought to be able to get on with the job, if you understand me. So it's not a question of saying, well, I am acting, so therefore I can't get this done. No, you have all the power and authority of the office.
But there are some
positions
in the country, Martin, that have a particular tenure, so they are not likely to be influenced politically, because you don't have that guillotine hanging over your head. And that is why those positions are substantive to what Richard referenced. So while it technically should not impact your performance and you giving your all, the fact that you have a year and you could be renewed or not renewed, and then the next year and you could be renewed, it can have some impact.
Yes, I mean, at a human level, I could understand that, yes, it can impact on an individual, but you are supposed to be able to rise above that if it is that you have accepted the acting appointment. So having accepted the acting appointment, you can't say, well, because I am not confirmed, I am not able to give my best or give my fullest. That can't be an excuse.
Well,
so I think we have to look past that.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Isn't it a bit unfair to Ms. Christopher to say that she may not, and I'm using my words, may not be effective because she only has until May and then she may only get a year is not a bit unfair to her in terms of prejudging her performance?
No. Nobody's prejudging her. What we're saying is that the JSC would have been a wonderful opportunity for her to demonstrate to the nation what her plans are. And as I said, we all are hoping that she succeeds. For Trinidad and Tobago's benefit, we hope she succeeds. Nobody wants her to fail in this.
Yeah, but for sure. Because she is coming in at probably the toughest time a police commissioner ever came into office.
Possibly, quite possibly. I fully agree. I fully agree. Because there are lots of issues swirling around still. You have the FUL investigation going on. You have several other things going on. But I mean, the point is, she has to basically man up to the job. And I say that, no pun intended.
I'm going to tell Mrs. Christopher the same thing I would have told Gary Griffith and any other commissioner before. Clean up the police service and you halfway there to cleaning up crime. The police service is where that action needs to take place first. And you're seeing evidence of it every single day at every level from policemen and policewomen. You're seeing the problems. They are abusive, they abuse their authority in large measure, and they take advantage of citizens. And if you
look at the officer who's on charges now.
Yes.
I mean, that's a classic example of why the public, in a large respect, has lost confidence and mistrust the police service. In spite of everything that's happened in the last couple of years, you choose to do that in a public space with that level of hubris.
I'm not sure if Erla Christopher has actually received the instruments in terms of her appointment. Or if
she hasn't.
She hasn't, Richard.
She's still a designee to this point.
Yes, that's correct.
But I do think there is value. I'm not even talking about the JSC. I'm talking about, I do think there is value for Erla Christopher, even as the designate, to hold a press conference with the country.
I agree. I fully agree.
These are my plans. This is where crime is at, and setting the tone for her stewardship.
I fully agree, because in other words, what are you going to do differently that has not been done before that is going to make make that change that we are all yearning for? And she needs to lay out some sort of plan in that regard and be able to show us, because otherwise it's not supposed to be just a question of marking time until retirement.
But we wish her all the best. I bring up this next topic with great trepidation and a bit of sarcasm. The missing file, or the non-missing file, or the misplaced file, or the non-misplaced file, and the case that was not presented by the state, resulting in a $20 million judgment in absentia. And how, because I've seen you comment on it, I've seen Martin Daly comment on it. We interviewed Ramesh Lawrence Mirage. Martin Daly says that the population, I'm paraphrasing, is being hoodwinked by the excuse that the file was missing, so we couldn't present a defense, a challenge. Ramesh Lawrence Mirage, we spoke to last week, who said missing file is a misnomer because of the system that's involved with the interconnectivity of the various elements putting together a case and defending and prosecuting a case, including the police. So what are the elements here that disturb you most?
I would think that the explanations which emanated from the Office of the Attorney General, which tended to generate more questions than answers, I think that's the most disturbing aspect of it, because the Attorney General is the only other officer necessary, apart from the Prime Minister, to constitute the cabinet. You look at Section 75 of the Constitution, they make that clear. To comprise the cabinet, you must have the Prime Minister and the Attorney General. So you could have a cabinet with them alone. So that gives you the significance and importance of that role and function. So therefore, when you speak from the office of the Attorney General, you are supposed to inspire confidence, trust, and people are supposed to recognize that, well, look, yes, he has spoken and we accept and respect what he says. That does not appear to have been the case with that press conference. And, you ask yourself several questions. When you talk about, okay, a physical file and you say it was missing and you didn't have it, and that is being proffered as some part of some conspiracy theory, the file was, in fact, the words were used, made to disappear. And then he said, well, he's not forming a conclusion, so he pulled back on that. So basically, you are delving into the realm of, these ideas of, some, nefarious plot going on behind the scenes. And the reality is, as we in the profession all know, Richard, you know this, we are into electronic filing and electronic service since during the pandemic.
Exactly.
Everything is filed and served electronically. So what are you telling me about a missing paper file?
Yeah, it's puzzling. It's puzzling. Yeah.
And then when you look at the trail of emails back and forth between the chief state solicitor's officer and the attorneys for these 9 men, you saw acknowledgements all along the way. You saw documents being served. Then you saw the replies by email saying, yes, received. Notices were sent out by the judiciary as to the hearings. Those notices were received and acknowledged. So what are you telling me about this, this story about a missing paper file? And then it turns out that, well, who knows, maybe it was not missing at all, because the minute you appoint the investigators to locate to unearth the mystery of this missing file, the file pops up. So it's either these investigators are extremely, good at what they're doing, in which case we could ask them to go and find the Loch Ness Monster, go and find Bigfoot and, go and find the Easter Bunny, because, the point is that the file showed up immediately. So then what are you really telling us? And since then, we've not had a press conference from the AG saying, well, okay, this is what happened as to why we found the file. He's standing behind the investigator and saying, well, the investigation is going on.
Yeah, he's standing behind that. You know what is confusing to me, Martin? The issue there, the Surgeon's office and the Chief State Solicitor both have workflows that in a normal, because this is not new to them. This case, the issue of cases against the state is not a new thing. The case is constantly sued, constitutional motions,
all the time.
They're always getting these kinds of cases. So there is an established workflow. So what went wrong? And there are many competent people in those divisions. So I'm not so sure what went wrong. So my only assumption is that the workflow had to have been changed.
Well, I don't know, but the thing is, even the attempt to disassemble and disaggregate the separate divisions doesn't make any sense, because all one has to do is just go on the website for the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, and you actually see they have it almost as a logo, all your departments under one umbrella serving you. So therefore, the Surgeon, Chief State Solicitor, the Attorney General's office, they are all under one umbrella. So therefore, you can't point fingers and say, well, Chief State Solicitor did this or didn't do that. Or, no, they are all under the aegis of the Ministry of Attorney General and Legal Affairs. And therefore, in other words, responsibility has to stop with you. It has to come to your feet, and you have to claim and own it. And basically, man up and say, well, hey, listen, all right, okay, clearly the ball was dropped. This is not going to happen again because these systems are being put in place, something of that nature, right? But here's where it gets even more mysterious, Paul and Richard and Wendell. You saw as part of the judgment from Master Alexander, where it was clearly stated that the state attorneys who represented Trinidad and Tobago and the Attorney General's office in the assessment of damages, they made an offer of $1.2 million for each of these 9 men. Where did these state attorneys get that authority from? They cannot, of their own volition, walk into a courtroom and say, I am offering. No, that's not possible. You always have to get that signed off from the highest authority. They are the ones who will give you the authority. So therefore, when you come to the public and the impression is given, well, all of this happened behind our back in secret. No. Who gave the state attorneys the authority to offer? Because they made an offer, I want the public of Trinidad and Tobago to understand that. So in other words, even if Ananu Logan and his team did nothing, the state was already putting on the table an offer of $1.2 million each for those men. So in other words, you're talking, basically the state was already offering more than $10 million in a judgment. Voluntarily, they offered that. Where did those instructions come from? Who signed off on that? Those are the questions that need to be answered, and we need some transparency.
In terms of the outcome of the investigation by retired Justice Vincent Nelson, is a senior counsel, I think, and
former CCJ judge.
Yeah, and Stanley John. What is important to you as a citizen coming out of that investigation?
Well, the thing is, first of all, I would hope that there is complete independence in their investigation. And I have already flagged something that was of concern to me when I saw the release, the late evening or late night release by Justice Stanley John, Justice of Appeal Stanley John, comment on the Attorney General office's letterhead. So that by itself raises questions. In other words, are you really that independent if the release is coming on the letterhead of the Attorney General, where they said they found the file? So the independence is important, and I think both men are more than capable of demonstrating robust independence, and I think they need to make that clear to the public, so that way at least there would be some semblance of trust and reliability that people will place on whatever they find. Because we don't want this investigation to simply be a cloak or a mask for excusing or exonerating or exculpating those who are responsible, to say, well, there's nothing to see here. No, nobody's at fault. Nothing happened, that kind of thing. The public would not be satisfied if that is the intent. And I respect those two gentlemen too much to think that they would ever be a part of that.
Well,
but I think they need to demonstrate that clearly to the public.
Is there no credibility issue with information coming from the Office of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs?
Well, that sounds like you touching on the Miami case.
Well, it's not one thing.
Yes.
You just outlined the reason given for the lack of mounting a defense to the individual April Coleman thing. We have the situation where, and Reginald Amor is one of the nicest guys you'll meet. He's a
yes, that's the thing.
But at the end of the day, it's not one thing in a pretty short tenure so far.
Yes. The point is, it's interesting.
This is coming on the heels of an Attorney General who was essentially demoted.
But yes. I was going to touch on that. Is he being called upon to clean up mess that he didn't create?
Well, the point is, even if that's the case, then you need to call a spade and, say, okay, this is what I found. This is where the problem is. But we haven't heard that. Instead, what we've gotten is smoke and mirrors. And that is where I am very disappointed. All we've gotten is smoke and mirrors and attempts to deflect and shift focus and basically to do a disappearing act, so to speak. It's like the file disappeared and then now it reappeared. Wow, the next thing we'll see a rabbit being pulled out of a hat at the next press conference.
Let's pull this rabbit out of this hat. Do you expect any one of those office holders to pay a price for what is clearly a mess in the area.
Not in Trinidad and Tobago. I think in any civilized country in the world, you would see people, first of all, tendering their resignations. And if not, they would be immediately called upon to resign and, demit office, but not in Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, we promote people when they do things like this. So there's absolutely no question of anybody stepping down or resigning. It's not going to happen. That's the country we have. Let's be realistic.
Vincent Nelson has now asked for his case file to be unsealed and made public. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think that is interesting because he now has, turned on the state. He was supposed to be the state's ace in the hole. And due to the unraveling of this whole Vincent Nelson fiasco, which again is another thing where really and truly there ought to have been some proper accountability and persons should have been called upon to demit office for that fiasco, he is now waging his war against the state because he feels, well, look, hey, I'm the one left holding the bag here. So it's going to be very interesting to see when those proceedings are unsealed.
Bag of money.
Sorry?
Or he wants to be the one left holding the bag of money.
Well, I guess so.
Wasn't the bag of money always the intention?
Well, it appears that was the root of it all. That appears to have been the genesis of it all.
But isn't that the history of the individual?
But even in that matter, I mean, when you look at what appears to have been unwarranted interference, you ask yourself, where are we really going as a nation? Why do these things continue to happen? And you have these grandiose, you make a big show of, yes, we're going and deal with this, we're going and then everything falls down in a shambles, and you have millions of dollars wasted again in legal fees that you pay to senior counsels or persons you fly in from abroad. You put them up in hotels, and I mean, we just keep going through this type of cycle again and again and again. And you ask yourself now, even with this current investigation into this disappearing file, I mean, how many millions more is it going to cost the state in trying to chase down this rabbit hole of the disappearing file?
Martin, life in some way mirrors movies and movies mirror life, right? So I was telling these guys and them, I had watched an episode the other day recently of CSI New York, I think, where this officer went into this jail. He went in as an officer and started a riot, encouraged a riot in the prison for a particular prisoner to escape, right? And at the end of the day, in getting out of the prison himself, he was shot. But before he died, before he took his last breath, he confessed to the officers that his family were being held hostage and being threatened if he didn't break out this prisoner. You see where I'm going with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe at all possible that we could be facing scenarios like that in Trinidad and Tobago, where people's families are under threat and they're being forced to do certain things to allow people to go free?
Well, I honestly don't know. I don't like to speculate on things I don't have facts about. So I mean, it sounds like a very nice and interesting movie plot, but in terms of whether it is really occurring, I can't say yay or nay.
But you said just now a short while ago that this is Trinidad. You don't expect anybody to pay a price.
Right, that's for sure.
Right. But so in Trinidad, can we expect that something like that could be happening? Do you think that something like that is possible?
Well, I mean, the point is, I would not even want to venture a speculation or, because if that is possible in Trinidad and Tobago, then we are really in a bad place. So I don't even want to speculate on that.
We have had state witnesses killed in here, man.
Well, yes, of course,
yeah.
of course.
People who have turned on
of course, but I mean, what you are alluding to goes a little bit deeper than that, and I'm hoping we never get there.
But
That's all I'll
did
say.
you answer the
The
question?
state has
Maybe I
always
missed
said
it.
that state witnesses were killed because they left the state witness protection.
Mhm.
That's the state's position.
Mhm.
That they were not killed while in state protection.
Mhm.
So let's be clear about that.
Did you answer the question about whether you think the Vincent Nelson file should be unsealed and made public? Because he's saying he wants it made public. There was a statement from the maybe the office of the Attorney General, I could be wrong, that the DPP, that while the case was going on, the DPP has dropped the charges against Ram Logan and Ramdeen. It would be improper to release to make this files public. That case has been discontinued.
Mhm.
So should the Vincent Nelson file be made public, unsealed?
Well, I would think that, as a matter of full transparency and accountability, maybe it should. I mean, unless the DPP can proffer some realistic hope of reinstating the charges, or to say, well, okay, I am rarely going to be bringing back those charges, so therefore the release of that file is going to interfere with that, then of course you respect the jurisdiction of the DPP in that regard. But in the absence of that, it may lend to giving us greater insight into all that occurred behind the scenes, because it is clear that there was tremendous manipulation and lots of machinations going on behind the scenes in this whole Vincent Nelson fiasco.
Absolutely.
But wasn't that implied when
And I'm not
DPP
even
said
sure
that he dropped the case while the civil case was going on?
Sorry?
Wasn't that implied that the case could be coming by the criminal part of it, because the DPP said, and I'm paraphrasing, that he discontinued the Ram Logan Ramdeen case while Mr. Nelson's civil case was ongoing, and it would be unfair to continue holding that without.
Well, it wasn't just about the civil case,
Paul.
It was about the fact that Victor Nelson was saying that he wasn't going to make himself available.
Or just that,
to give
okay.
evidence
Right.
for
Yeah,
the preliminary
yeah.
inquiry.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't just about the civil case. But
Yeah.
even if the civil case ends and the DBP thinks that he can reinstate the charges, the case is already weakened, in my opinion. Because now
Well,
you have the credibility
and you see, not just that, the
credibility of
thing
the
is,
witness is now going to come into focus.
well, that's the whole thing. So, I mean, and the credibility of the state's main witness has basically been shot to hell, because now the state is at war with its own witness.
It's
So,
not
I mean,
tenable.
yeah, I can't
untenable
see any
situation.
realistic possibility of that being reinstated. And, I mean, as you harken back to the malicious prosecution issue with respect to these 9 gentlemen, you ask yourself, if at the end of this whole fiasco, is it that Mr. Ram Logan and Mr. Ramdeen will also be looking to file malicious prosecution cases on their own?
Well, I
I
think
mean, they now have a wonderful
that.
precedent of $20 million from the courts that they can use as a starting point.
And they're not litigation shy. So
So I mean, we really are not in a good place at this point. And I mean, it comes back to what you're saying, Paul, in terms of the credibility coming out of the Attorney General's office. We need to be able to have that faith, trust, and confidence. Right? Look at how Merrick Garland in the U.S. Look how he handled the finding of these documents and papers in Joe Biden's home. He immediately took action, because it didn't matter that, okay, I am appointed by you. The fact of the matter is that, look, the law must take its course. The same way it took its course with Trump, then it has to take its course with you. And I think he got the respect of the nation when he did so. And that's what an attorney general is supposed to be. An attorney general is supposed to be attorney general for all of the country. You are not attorney general for a political party. You are not supposed to come out here and parrot a political line or come out and sing for your supper. That's not what the country needs. The country needs somebody who is strong, robust, independent. And if it is that your own government is doing nonsense, you have to have the balls and the testicular fortitude to stand up and tell them that.
But
such great supply these days,
As you said previously, Martin, it's Trinidad and Tobago.
Exactly. And now I'm going to tell you.
You have to import testosterone.
We spoke about our culture, Martin. You're forgetting what?
What? And speaking of testosterone and testicular fortitude and testicular hubris, What do you think inspires persons to bring a bill which seeks to empower a sitting cabinet member the power to extend an FUL license?
Well, I mean, I think you all skillfully dealt with that in the parliament, and I saw that a very esteemed senator described it as a big red flag, and I think that's, I mean, clearly what it was.
I'm speaking to the mindset and the need for the kind of vigilance against that sort of potential.
Right. And it comes back to what occurs in, small economies such as ours, where basically persons set themselves up as tin gods. They want to be the strong man, the big man. I control everything. So everything you must come to me. And of course, that helps to consolidate them in power. Because in other words, if ultimately I am the one to decide if this gets extended or not, then clearly I have that power over you. And that's basically all that it was about. And I'm glad that you all spotted it and
has always
it.
been, you don't, without casting any aspersions as to any particular minister of national security, my mindset is you don't make law. We have Trump as a president, so you don't make law for who in power, but who may come to power, who may not have integrity. Or the potential for abuse.
That's right. That's right.
So while you may seem to be okay and integritous, I don't know who could come
beyond yourself and think, okay, 5 years, 10 years down the road, suppose you have a minister in the office who seeks to abuse this. Why then put it in place? Yeah, I agree with you fully. I agree with you fully in that regard.
We had them already, God forbid we get them back again.
Wait a second. How you all have this man on this show still?
His opinions are sometimes valid. His opinions are sometimes valid. Because they may have a particular skew doesn't invalidate them all the time.
You have a skew either way. I've criticized both.
Yeah, but I mean, but people have the right to their voice. People have the right to their political affiliation.
Yes. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
They have some left, they have some right, and they have some center.
Yes.
And they have some right, left, nothing.
I'm one of the very few people who is actually a representative of the People's National Movement or in the media.
I didn't know that. I was not aware of that. I just love your comments. I love how you just call it as you see it.
Yeah.
That's what I love about you.
And I've called it against the PNM too, even though I am a member.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's good. That's good. At least you're able to be that objective.
To have you and not head over to beautiful Tobago. And what we're expecting this week into the next 2 weeks should be bumper economically. A bumper time economically for Tobago, shouldn't it?
Well, it's more the after carnival period. It's more the after carnival period because I don't know why you have persons in Tobago still trying to persist with the idea of maintaining 2 carnivals. Tobago cannot sustain 2 carnivals in a year. The October experiment, I think, was very well for a first start. And once they keep building on that can grow to actually be Tobago's carnival. And I think eventually they are going to have to, move away from the February carnival and just make Tobago the getaway place, the calm, serene place, while you have all the hectic activity in Trinidad during that time. So therefore, you cater for a totally different segment of the market. So you have Boy Scouts, Girl Guides, nature lovers, you have church groups, that kind of thing. So, and you market Tobago that way. So therefore, you basically are capturing a large segment of people because lots of people who don't participate in Carnival, they want to get away from it, that kind of thing. So you cater for them. Why try to compete with Trinidad having your own Carnival at the same time when, it's not even... You're not even able to muster, any of the quality.
And then what the hell you going to market? Oh, we just had Carnival, but we're having Carnival again.
Yeah, very well said, Martin Joe.
And then come to Carnival in October. No, come to Carnival in February. No.
Yes. It's confusing. So they need to focus on one event and make that work. And I think having it in October, there's so many advantages because let me tell you, okay, take for instance, if somebody wanted to play mass in Trinidad Carnival in February and you didn't have the money or whatever, you could say, right, look, I'll save up for October and I'll play my mass then, right? You could now have a market for persons from abroad who may not have gotten time off from their jobs because, for many of the foreigners, they have to apply long in advance to get the time off. So if they couldn't make it for February, they could plan for October in Tobago. So, I mean, why not focus on one product? Develop that.
Yep. And you know what happens in October? A lot of Trinidadians who of course have a visa flock to Miami. Now you're giving them the option to stay right here in Tobago.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have those who go to carnivals all over the world. They will still go Miami and they will still come to Tobago.
Yeah. I'm talking about the ones who get the visa revoked now. They get blank. Tobago down ahead.
Yes. Indeed.
You're throwing that for? I'm not sure.
I'm throwing that for nobody.
You're throwing that for somebody.
Not yet.
You see what I tell you all about him?
He's well trained.
But listen, Wendell, you add so much life and zest. I love hearing you and listening to you.
Don't say it so loud, Martin.
Well, he has to have an outlet somewhere, His outlets are dwindling. Martin, just thank you for being with us this morning.